Hello again and welcome. Thank you very, very much for tuning into this Gaimh podcast, the Gauteng Infant Mental Health podcast. Today, so glad to be joined by Miri Keren. We're going to be talking a lot about co-parenting from the mountains in Israel. How are you doing?
Good.
Lovely.
Thank you for providing me this opportunity to talk to you and to share our experience that we have collected for many years, actually, with working with both parents and the infant.
Wonderful, and that's exactly what we want to talk about today. We want to talk about co-parenting. What are the roles? How we could intervene, perhaps. So I want to start off just by talking about moms and dads' maternal and paternal states of mind. How do we approach this thing differently? What is the state of mind of a father walking into a co-parenting situation?
Part of this, I think that we can talk about the state of mind related to attachment, which is one piece, and the mental state which is related to co-parenting. I think that it's important to make the differentiation and to understand what each of them brings in a unique way to the infant. Because, for example, if we start with attachment, we know now that a secure attachment to dad is very much linked with the child's future capacity for exploration, his drive for doing things, looking for new things, while the secure attachment to mom is very much linked to the capacity of the child for caring for another, for empathy. So if someone asks me, maybe a secure attachment to mom is enough to grow up into a healthy person, I would say, if there is a dad around, better also to have a secure attachment to dad, as the child will become a person who cares and also who is not afraid of exploring, of going a little bit far, of separation, and so this would be a kind of the basis of the relationship, the dyadic relationship between mom and child, and between dad and child. Now, the co-parenting is at another level. The co-parenting is at the triadic level, is at the having the child looking at mom and dad working together at helping him to grow up into a healthy person. So now what is behind the co-parenting style of each parent is something that I think is very much related to the quality of the co-parenting that each of the parent has experienced in his own childhood with his own parents.
Okay.
So the dyadic relation, the mental state, I would differentiate between the dyadic mental state and the triadic mental state in each of the parents. The dyadic mental state is very much correlated with the attachment, very much linked to the experience that I, as a parent, had with each of my parents when I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
The triadic mental state would be much more related to how I have experienced the triad in my own childhood, how I have experienced my two parents working together or not working together at the specific goal of my uprising as a child.
Okay.
I'm not sure. Am I clear?
It's very interesting because it's almost then it becomes intergenerational.
Well, it doesn't become, it is.
It is.
It is intergenerational. And this is very often, when the parents ask us, why do you ask me questions about my childhood? I came to you with my child with such and such problem. Why do you ask so much about my own childhood? And my answer is, well, your child's symptoms may be related to the way to your parenting behaviors, and your parenting behaviors may be very much related to what you have seen at home. The co-parenting, I have learned the concept of co-parenting from Geha Mental Health in the United States, who has worked very closely with Elisabeth Fivas in Lausanne, in Switzerland. Elisabeth Fivas has written, I think, a very important book that is named The Primary Triangle. And she has shown how a very, very young infant, 4-month-old, 5-month-old infant is able to interact significantly with both parents at the same time, and is able to translate the parents' postures as telling him who is going to be in communication with him.
Wow.
And so this is why, and she called that the basis of intersubjectivity. And so she has worked on that in Lausanne, and McHale in the States worked with families. And so how much again and again the outcome of the child is much more dependent on the family functioning than on the quality of the dyadic relationship. And in the clinics, many clinics still work only with the dyad, only with the mother-child relationship, which is very, very important. That's not the point. But the father-child relationship is as well important, and the co-parenting, which is different because it's mom and dad in front of the child, or not in front of the child. Okay, if you do not have a good co-parenting, then you have the clinical situations where mother or father is making a kind of alliance with the child at the detriment of the other parent.
Okay, so this triangle works in all different ways. So what you're looking for is an alliance of mom and dad to stand in front of the child, and that's the way we want to go. But sometimes you can get a mom and child alliance, which is then creating an imbalance.
The father. Okay. You can have also the opposite. You can have a father-child alliance that excludes the mother. And you can have two parents you can have a total lack of alliance.
You can have, I get what you're saying, and then everyone's kind of on their own boat.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So
you can have also a couple who is very much child-centered and have no marital relationship So you can see that in divorced parents who can be able to have a co-parenting alliance, so to be working together for the sake of the child, in spite of having no marital relationship.
So it's another level of work together.
Right.
Okay. What would you say, just thinking now, what would you say then if you had a situation with like a grandparent that lived at the house? And now, I mean, it almost opens up a little bit, because then you can have, it could possibly be disruptive. The second part is then you could have almost like a tripartite alliance, forming on one side. I can imagine that can be quite detrimental to any sort of growth pattern.
Well, the more people you add, the more complicated it becomes. It's like a puzzle, a big puzzle. I think that grandparents can have a buffer impact, a buffering impact. Of course, it can have the opposite, but in a way, it depends. I guess that grandparents who had a good co-parenting alliance when they were parents would be able to have a good co-grandparenting.
Wow. And even to then pull it back, even more intergenerational, what their experience of a child was when they were parented is then also going to be. And I suppose the world is a different place if you're looking back 4 generations. That's very interesting. Okay. Sorry, I think I derailed things there a little bit, but it's an interesting, just interesting to dive into the concept a little bit, I think. Okay, so co-parenting as a framework, why is it so important for a baby's development to have co-parenting?
Okay, this is for him the opportunity to have or to internalize a complementary way of looking at him. It's like having, instead of having 2 eyes looking at him, mirroring him, it's like having 4 eyes mirroring him. Now, if it is in a complementary way, it, I would say, enriches the way that the infant internalizes himself or herself. It can be, for example, wow, daddy knows how to make me dare climbing and going to this and that, and mom knows exactly when I feel stressed. So these 2 people have me in their mind in a different but complementary way. And I must be somebody very special if I evoke in 2 different people this complementary view. And I think that it gives the child a model of how you can work as a team with somebody else. And I guess that it's not very much surprising why children who have experienced very, very poor marital relationship in their own home, with divorce or without divorce, may be at a higher risk of having difficulties with intimate relationships when they become adult than others. It's not a 1% correlation, but in a way, experiencing the co-parenting means to experience on a daily basis how 2 people dialogue, how two people think about problems that are related to me, and hopefully find a solution.
Almost gives you a framework to see how that would operate. And then that going forward then becomes your framework of how that sort of mother-father dyad will work together.
Exactly.
Okay. So how do we then identify a problem in a co-parenting situation?
First of all, by definition, you need to observe both parents and the child.
Okay.
You cannot do it theoretically without seeing the actual interaction.
Okay, so that's the first thing. All participants have to be in front of you.
Yes.
To be able to get an idea. And what kind of red flags are we looking out for when co-parenting is hitting a problem?
We can look for red flags on the observational level, and we can also use the interview that McHale has developed about co-parenting.
Okay.
So on the observational level, you may first of all look at the non-verbal level. How do they sit? Okay, you invite them to come to your office. Better to, as we are talking about small children, better to work on the carpet, and to be at the level of the child, and to see how they organize themselves in the space. So let's try. I will try to show it this way. Okay. So you have, let's say, this is mom, this is dad, and this is baby.
Okay.
Okay. So I will look at which distance each of them sit. Okay. If I see, for example, mom sits very close to baby.
Okay.
And dad is over there. I start wondering, how are they going to have a co-parenting alliance? Okay. If I see mom and dad close together, okay, and the child in front of them, it already gives me a hint that they will be able to look at the child together and to talk to him, to relate to him at the same time. If I see the mom sitting on the carpet, the child wandering around, and the father sits on the chair, then I think, okay, is the father excluding himself, or is he excluded?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I may say, well, Daddy, we need you also on the carpet. And he may say, really? Do you need me? This is a true example, actually.
Man.
And then you say, well, I see that you're surprised. And he would say, oh yes, well, my wife doesn't need me. She does it all on her own anyway. She doesn't listen to what I think regarding the child. Okay. And all this clinical material just came up within 10 minutes, just around how they chose to sit.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a kind of the non-verbal level. At the verbal level, we listen to how much each parent takes into account the other parent's perspective. Okay. And the interview is the questions of the interview are very useful in our experience. We are actually now using it on a routine basis. The first question is very simple question. You ask each of the parents in a different session when they are alone. So after having observed the triadic interaction, then you may ask each parent to come for a different session, and you ask them, so tell me, who is taking care mostly of your child? Some of the parents, you hear the father saying, well, we do it equally. And at the same question, the mother will answer differently, and she will say, I take care most of the time.
Yeah.
Okay? You'll have already a different answer to the same question. The second question is, can you tell me about something good that your partner, so wife or husband, does with your child? Then, how much do you find yourself criticizing your partner in front of the child?
Sure.
How much do you feel criticized by your partner? How often do you talk about these feelings? And when you talk about these feelings, does it help? And we have added 3 questions about the transgenerational. We have added, we ask them, tell me, what do you remember of the way that both parents were with you? How much did you work as a team?
Yeah.
How much did they criticize each other? And the last question is, how do you think this past experience of co-parenting in your own childhood impacts your behavior as a parent together with your partner today? So we make the link between the past and the present in that question. And we use this interview both in order to better understand ourselves, but also as a kind of intervention. Because it makes the parent reflect about co-parenting.
Yeah. Very interesting, huh? So there's a whole host of things to look at when you're looking at how this dynamic, because it's a huge dynamic, and as you say, so many role players on so many different sides, and you're trying to find out exactly where almost the balance sits on those little pieces of the triangle, and then the intervention, I suppose, is always aimed at trying to bring that back into balance. Yeah.
Yes, and of course, you have the parents who are able to reflect on this and to see this, and those who are not. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. You have actually made me think about a lot of things through the last little bit. I've really enjoyed this chat, especially looking at that tripartite idea. And really interesting, and to see where those balances come in. Miri, thank you so much for spending time with us, bringing us up to speed with co-parenting, what to look for, and what it is. And I thank you very much for your time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.